Welcome to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast, your go-to resource for all things tennis coaching. Your host is Steve Whelan. Here, we dive deep into ecological dynamics and constraint-led coaching practices. Whether you're a seasoned coach or just starting out, this podcast is designed to build your confidence, expand your knowledge, and refine your techniques. Join me as we challenge traditional methods, explore player-centered approaches, and transform your coaching experience. Let's take your coaching game to the next level together. Stay tuned for insightful discussions and practical tips that will make a real difference on and off the court.
And welcome, as always, back to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I'm your host and founder of mytenniscoaching.com, Steve Whelan. And today we're going to discuss professional tennis players and how they train and observations from Wimbledon over the past couple of weeks. I recently got involved in a heated conversation with a tennis coach on social media about professional players. Obviously, on my Instagram, at My Tennis Coaching, I talk a lot about ecological dynamics, constraint-led coaching, and I also sort of debunk myths of traditional coaches, such as basket feeding, isolated practice. And one coach sent me a DM and said they'd just been to Wimbledon and they witnessed a professional player being drop-fed. And they were just in isolation, repeating the action over and over again. And their comments were quite simple. The professional players are doing it. Everything that you say is basically a load of rubbish. And it's a common misconception, I think, that just because professional players do something, that's the highest thing, that's the best thing players can do. If the elite player's doing it, then you should copy them. If you want to be a top player, that's what you should do. But context is key. And again, this is the lack of knowledge, I would say, from tennis coaches, the lack of understanding, the lack of skills. Because you can't just copy and paste what a top player does into your regular program. And context is key. And what we tend to sort of miss from watching the top players train is a couple of things. So number one, most top players are practicing, and I'll say that in air quotes, even though I'm on a podcast, they're practicing during competition. So again, the player that this player was watching was at Wimbledon. They were actually playing that day as well. The player, I can't remember the player's name. But they're actually playing that day. So if they're playing on that day, they're not going to be training and playing sets. They're not going to be playing high intense matches. Because one, they want to conserve energy. Two, they don't want to risk any injury. And three, they generally will have a half-hour window, maybe 45-minute practice window. So a lot of the time when you watch these players at Grand Slams like Wimbledon, you can get down to the practice courts. A lot of the time they're just getting a feel. They're virtually doing a warm-up. So again, the player in question, we don't know the context of why they were getting drop-fed. But it might be a case of, I just want to get a feel. I just want to hit lots and lots of forehands just to get a feel for it, to build confidence up. They're not at that stage looking to develop any type of skill. They're not looking to improve anything. It's a case of, again, we don't know the context. It might just be, I want to hit lots of forehands, so I feel quite brave going out hitting the forehand. It may be a case of, I'm going to look to use a specific type of forehand in the match more, so I just want to go out and just get a real good feel for it. It might be a case of, okay, I just want to get used to just hitting a few balls lower off the grass. Again, we don't know the context. So you can't see a professional player in isolation, out of context, and then think, well, if they're doing that, then I should bring that back to my club. And it was in a response to a post I put on Instagram saying things that I didn't see at Wimbledon, and it was like, I didn't see a C shape, didn't see tip stance, didn't see a long hold follow through. And the coach was like, yeah, but in the practice, I've seen all those things. Well, of course you're going to see those things in isolation. My post was in reference to in the match. You rarely see those things. So again, that just brings up my point. Yes, you can do that type of stuff in isolation. You can do the tip stance. You can do the long follow through. You can do the hip and shoulder rotation all you want when the ball's being drop fed. But as soon as you get that into a live ball match situation, you're not going to see the same movements. So the coach actually backed up my post. But the blind arrogance maybe of the coach was, yeah, but the pros are doing it. And that's the dangerous bit, really. And I've put a few posts out recently about social media. Like, we'll see clips of these players in training, or we'll see them conduct a drill, or we'll watch them on a Toglu do a drill, or one of the top tennis influencers do an activity or a drill, and we just think we can copy and paste it into our own players, as if tennis coaching's that simple. Context is so important. And if coaches believe that what the top players are doing, you can filter that down to the younger generation, then to me, that's just a complete lack of knowledge of the coach and skill. And again, we have this mindset of, yeah, well, if we do these things now, they need it later on in the game. Despite the fact that, again, if you watch any top player play, you won't see the tip stance of C shapes regularly, consistently. But then in training, coaches are training these things. And I understand the whole thing about, yeah, but most players will have some type of C-shape preparation. Well, yeah, because they've got to get the racket back behind the body, and there's only certain ways you can do that to keep the racket moving. So again, the intrinsic dynamics of each individual will bring that racket back differently. But coaches, again, think we can just copy what the top players do and then transfer it down. It just doesn't work that way. And it's an issue because, again, people then will see that and believe that's what coaching looks like. They'll go to the Grand Slams. They'll see Djokovic maybe basket feed and go, okay, well, if Djokovic is doing it and he's one of the greatest players ever, then I should do it, despite not knowing the context. And there's a post put out by Mike James, who is the Monotoglu analytics lead. I really like Mike, I like his stuff. And he put a post out on LinkedIn the other week, I think it was the first week before Wimbledon, saying, great to see 5 of the top 10 players in the world on the practice courts doing basket feeding. And again, a post like that is kind of dangerous because a lot of coaches look at that and go, okay, basket feeding's justified within the context. And like, I would basket feed a player if it was right for the context. I'm not working with any professional players now. But if a professional player said to me, listen, I just want to hit 100 forehands, just feed me 100 forehands, I want to get a feel for the ball because I'm lacking a bit of confidence, then fine, let's do it. If a player said to me, I just want to hit 100 serves into an empty service box with no returner, again, despite me knowing it's not going to really develop the skill, but if the player wants to do something like that, then fine. At the end of the day, it's the player's game. And another point within the pro game, but even that sort of high performance space, I was having a conversation with a coach at Wimbledon on this as well. And they were saying when they train at these academies, a lot of the coaches just copy each other's drills because of peer pressure. So they'll just bring out the classic 2-cross-1 line drill, the control the middle drill, because that's what everyone else is doing. And they're scared to deviate from that in case they upset the player. Or in case the national coaches or whoever say, well, yeah, we need more of this. Goes back to my post the other week about when I lost a player recently because we weren't training technically. So there's a lot of peer pressure in that space. And what we have to also understand is tradition's very difficult to get rid of. Tennis players have trained traditionally for over 100 years. The basket feed has been around for a long, long time. And there's a post again, a reply to one of my posts on Instagram this week. Yes, but if you look at professional baseballers, they hit off tees. Yes, if you look at the Major League Baseball teams, quite a few of them in practice will hit off a tee. It will not improve the batting. It's a different skill. But they'll do it. Why? Because they've always done it. And again, we don't know the reasons why. They just maybe want to get a warm-up. It might be a warm-up routine. It might not be for skill acquisition. They may not be trying to develop skill. But people watch bits of these practices and think, okay, well, the pros are doing that, we can bring it in. We also have to understand that any sport, professional athletes, they're training multiple times a day, maybe twice a day, 5-6 times a week. They're also competing at the very highest level of the sport every week. So a big bulk of their learning and their development's actually done in competition. The training at that part is just maintenance. It's just to keep them moving or work on very specific skills, very specific tactics that they're going to try and utilize in a match. It's not the same as our regular tennis program that we run at our clubs. It's different. It's different sport almost. And it's a bit like trying to get your football or soccer team to train like Manchester United. It's different. The context, the environment, the situation, the player, the athlete, they're all different. So you can't take the same practice or the task and apply it to your athletes in your environment. And for me, it's poor coaching if you do, because you're not taking into consideration the individual in front of you. But again, I go back, I just think it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of skill on coaches' parts when they think that. So there we go. As always, leave in the comments your thoughts and your thoughts on this matter. Should we be training players like the pros? Just because the pros will perform practices, does that mean we have to perform those practices? Shouldn't we not take into consideration the age and stage of the player? Let me know, as always, in the comments. Reach out to me over on Instagram at mytenniscoaching. Drop me an email, steve@mytenniscoaching.com, and check out mytenniscoaching.com. And if you are interested in learning more about ecological dynamics, check out my Coach Academy under the Coach Mastery tab. Until next week, have a great week, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring more insightful discussions and valuable tips to enhancing your coaching journey. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at MyTennisCoaching for daily inspiration, coaching advice, and behind-the-scenes content. Stay connected, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of your coaching skills. Until next time, keep fostering growth, innovation, and excellence on and off the court. See you in the next episode.